Right, yesterday we talked about, in lecture 3, we talked about two individuals swimming 200s and how pacing of that race could affect the outcome. What we're going to talk about uh, with this talk is just the differences between short sprints, what I consider like longer sprints, middle distance, and then the longer aerobic events. So what we were looking at when you were training for the 50s of strokes, the 200 relays, we are training to teach the individual to be able to put out a max effort. There's no pacing, and primarily what you're going to be using during the race is all your resting ATP and creatine phosphate in your anaerobic pathways. You still need some aerobic training because even after the race, you still need to buffer lactate, you need waste removal of CO2 and other byproducts, and it also, through aerobic training, it enhances your recovery. Particularly like if you are at a 3 or 4 day conference event and you're swimming, your longest event may only be 100 of a stroke or 100 free, but you may swim the 50 free finals, 200 free relay, 400 free relay, 200 medley relay. During the course of the meet, you may be swimming 12 times, and you really need that aerobic ability to enhance your recovery. Anaerobically, when you're training anaerobically, you're looking at getting great innervation with muscle fiber recruitment. You really need to learn to swim fast. You need to know what it means and what it feels like to be at max effort. You need to tolerate lactate. And what we have here is just what we saw before, where you have 100% effort all the way through the race. During the first 10 seconds or so, you're using up your resting ATP and creatine phosphate. Your anaerobic kicks in for the vast majority of the race. And again, that will start to tail off as you approach 35 seconds. And in all of these things, you'll have a combination of aerobic and anaerobic pathways. But aerobically, it's very little with these short sprints. As you move into the hundreds and 200s of stroke, which includes the 400 relays, and I would include the 800 free relays, it really is a combination of aerobic and anaerobic pathways. Pacing is a must. You cannot swim your first 50 this way and hope to be successful at the end of the 200 events. So you really have to know how to pace. And part of that pacing is knowing how to have easy speed early, to be as fast as you can early, and you need to know how to make your transitions, and that all is part of your aerobic training as you learn to swim at like 150 heart rate, 160 heart rate, 170, as you learn to know what it feels like to be at threshold, and then to finish your event above threshold, don't going max effort. So you need your aerobic training, you need your anaerobic training. Your anaerobic training you need because you need to know how to get home. You need to be able to swim fast at the end. You need to tolerate threshold lactate levels and max speed levels as you're producing a lot of lactate. And so you need both aerobic and anaerobic training if you're really going to be successful in those mid-ranges. Here's a little bit more of an example of your pathways that you might be looking at. Of course, your resting ATP and creatine phosphate tails off very quickly. Aerobically, you're going to try to get into that a lot sooner. With your easy speed, you're still going to have some anaerobic pathways involved, but those are going to try to stay at lower levels. Aerobically, as you begin to fatigue after a minute and a half or so, or maybe even not fatigue, you still want to throw in your anaerobic pathway for your first 30-35 seconds, and you really want to be anaerobic at the end of your event. You're 100%. Once the race is over, doesn't matter. You can just keep, you can sit on the wall and start catching your breath. For your longer events, 400s, 500s, 1650s, it's pretty much the vast majority is aerobic in nature. You do have to know what it feels like to swim at threshold. You might be doing a lot more threshold swimming here you know, in order to get that shift that we talked about, you know, in your workloads for various heart rates. So you need to know what pace, you need to know what pace you can hold, you need to know where you're training at, and the vast majority is sub-threshold and with some threshold training. For distance swimmers, Forbes Carlyle, his quote, "Miles make champions," really is true. If you're going to swim the 1650, you're going to swim the 500, you just have to put in miles and miles and miles. And the vast majority is going to be at sub-threshold. And again, over time, you're going to try to shift that threshold level over so that you can tolerate faster swim speeds and still remain at sub-threshold. You still need some anaerobic training. Most people that fall into this category are not real strong, big sprinter types, but you still need some anaerobic training, just even for the last part of your event. And here's an example. Now these are minutes here, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Your resting levels still drop off. You really want to try to get into your aerobic level right away. You can see where your anaerobic pathway is pretty low, except right at the end. For all of these things, they involve, whether you're a sprinter, middle distance, or distance, you need aerobic training and you need anaerobic training at all three levels. It's just a matter of percentages and how much. I have here that it's hardest to train for if you are in those middle ranges, because you have to do both. And part of the problem with that is you have some people that are going to be sharing events like maybe the 500s plus the 200s, and you have others that might be sharing events with 50s to the 100s and maybe step up to some 200s. So it's the hardest to train for, because you really have to be able to train for all. What we will be doing in a later talk is we will talk about specifically what are some things that we do for our sprinters, specifically what are some things we do for our middle distance people and like long sprint people, and then specifically what we do to train for the longer events. And that will come in a later talk.